Okay, continuing on with the Photomatix Pro. Alright, so I still need to do some more things here. Some of these I use more than others. Let's try reducing the saturation a little bit. Takes a little while, you can see working on it. Okay. I did that partly because I do have saturation highlights and saturation shadows way up there. The greens looked kind of bright to me as well. Tweaking the detail contrast. I think I'm going to have that all the way up. Okay. So I think this, if I remember right, yeah, this would be a good photo to merge with the photoshopped version of the evenly processed or exposed image. Have this in one layer, because it seems a little bit much, a little too dramatic, at least for my taste. And I'll show you an example I already have loaded in Photoshop of another image where I did that in just a few minutes. Okay, trying to see if there's anything else I might want to tweak. Gamma, let's bump that up, that will brighten it. Okay, that's a little too washed out. That's getting there, better. A little too dark. Well, it's kind of hard to, I'm going to bring it a little more to the left. Okay, that's pretty good. The whole thing is a little too dark in my mind, but I could tweak that more in Photoshop as well, and then merge it, with the other photoshopped image if I want to. I'm going to experiment here with the temperature, making it even warmer. Might end up being too much. Okay, well that is closer to what I uploaded to Flickr. I'll back off on that a little bit. A little bit more. And I think I'm going to tweak the lighting adjustments. I uncheckmark that, and I'm just going to tweak it manually. So let's see what it looks like a little more surrealistic, and then I'll bump it back over to the other side just for comparison. Okay, there's 0.36, or sorry, negative 3.6 on the surrealistic side. And this is more natural, which, I don't know, it looks darker, and let's try further over again. A little bit more. That might be, I don't know, a tad too much. Again, it's fairly subjective. You might not agree with how I'm tweaking the photo, so. I'm kind of trying to do a balance where the sky's not too dark and the foreground's not too light, and vice versa, the sky too light or foreground too dark. But with this sky, it tends to be dark, so, well, darker than the foreground even, it seems, so. Anyway, I could fine-tune this forever almost, but this is pretty good, so I can just, leave it like this. And I'm actually not going to save it because I've, photoshopped this one and HDR'd it before, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what the possibilities were. Hopefully that's a good, quick introduction or overview. So at this point, I'm just going to click off of it, and it will probably ask me, well, no, it didn't. Oh, this is still in Photomatix. I usually don't click off of something, so for a second I was wondering what this is. This is how it looks before it had those adjustments within. This is the merged image, but I think this is the 32-bit intermediary image, I think. Even though I clicked, I didn't want to show that, but I guess since I didn't save any of my settings there, at this point, I guess this is a good thing to show. Let's just pretend that I did save those settings. I clicked, well, I probably should have done that anyway. I clicked save or whatever and then it would pop this up like you see here, but it would have those settings that I was just specifying. Then I would go over here and click save as. And then I can save it. I usually save it as a TIFF file right there, and so that's that. Okay, let's go over to Photoshop. It's kind of there it goes. Alright, so this is what I was talking about, merging a Photomatix image and with a photoshopped image, you might say. These are two different examples of the same image. The only difference between these two, you can see right here. Notice if you can see it, hopefully you can. Right around the edges it's lighter. And the reason that is, if you remember in Photomatix, it will align your photos together. Well, whatever it did, it aligned and then cropped it, and then it cropped it smaller. So I kind of have this HDR image on the top, I believe it was on top, which is smaller. If I bumped up the opacity, right now it's at 40% to 100%, you can see it's missing around the edges where it cropped it. So this is the HDR image that was done in Photomatix, and you can see it's almost too dramatic. It's very pretty looking, but it wasn't quite realistic to what I saw in real life. Especially the clouds are very almost too dark. It's kind of approaching that too surrealistic look. There's also an issue right up here. You can see with the clouds it kind of just did something funny, and that is because these clouds are moving quickly, and when it's merged the images together, there were overlapping clouds that did some weird things. I could Photoshop that to fix it up, but when I'm bumping down the opacity, it doesn't matter as much. So anyway, what I did on this other one to get around that border that you were seeing that was cropped out of the HDR image, I put in a layer mask. It's right there. And what that is, it's useful. It's what I was telling you earlier, where I would delete certain areas of the HDR image that I didn't like. Let me just demonstrate that. It's easier to show through demonstration. I'm just going to make that so it's not visible, and let's just put another mask on this layer. So this is the photoshopped image. You can see the difference if it's all by itself. I'll just show you that first before we go on. So there's without the HDR image, and then I make the HDR layer visible again, and you can see with. So without and with, it adds a little more dramatic effect to it. So that's what I like to do, and I've got experimented with that, and it seems to work. anyway, that's at 40% on the HDR image as far as the opacity you can adjust right there. Okay, back to this layer and putting in a mask. Right down here is add layer mask icon, so I'll click on that and you see this pop up, a little white area. Make sure you actually click on it so you have it selected. If you click to the right of it, back on the image, you are off of the layer mask, so you can't do anything on it. Okay, so I clicked on it again, then I'll select my brush over here in the Tools panel. Notice that black is on top and white is on the bottom, and that will actually delete areas of this image. And the advantage of a mask over, say, the eraser, which is right here, you can actually bring back areas and keep tweaking back and forth just by going down here to this little double arrow with the corner on it and kind of bent arrow. If I click on that, white's on top, and that allows me to bring back whatever I deleted. So that's a nifty tool, a very useful thing to use. That can't be done as easily with an eraser. With the eraser, you have to keep clicking back, undo, and that's more of a pain. Okay, so I'm bringing this back. What I did around the edges is that I faded out, I fuzzed out. Let me get back here so I'm deleting. And you can tweak your brush size up here, if you remember back from the last class when I was showing the clone stamp tool. It also uses the brush. So what I did, let's see, hardness is at 0. I'll undo that, Command Z, or undo, Control Z. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. So what I did, I wanted, instead of having, like you see over here, this hard line, in fact, I'll just do it on this layer. It'll be easier to show you. I faded out, I'll create a layer mask, faded out the edge so it wasn't a hard edge. So I just click right here, and I go over to the other corner and I hold down Shift. That's going to, when you hold down Shift and you click one area and then click the next area over here, it will connect those two dots. Just like when I'm over here and I hold down Shift, it will select both layers and everything in between. It will also delete everything in between over here. So that's what I did. Let me just click on this layer mask area again. I just fade out that line. I think I used a maybe slightly smaller brush, but I wanted to make sure that it was gradual. If I had too small of a brush, it's not going to be a gradual, a very subtle fade out. Smaller brush will be more abrupt, closer to this hard line. So you can see there kind of, it's a little bit obvious right there, so I might want to bring some of it back. I can brush it back in. Let's have to be careful though. So if I hold down Shift again, especially in the sky is kind of where it's maybe I cropped it more too. No, I didn't, because you can see right here, here's the so if I put that in, what's that? Let's see, there we go, okay, it's working out. Let's just delete the mask. So you can see it again there, you see the line and around the edges. So I'll undo that though. But yeah, that's what I did, I have a mask there. You can see right around the let's go back over. It looks like, oh, okay, I see what I did. You see, it's only really visible. Well, let's get rid of this mask. Actually, no. Okay, let's put this opacity back to 40, the way it was. And yeah, at that point, I only have a problem really in the sky. I don't even, well, there's a problem over here too. Maybe, well, I can't remember. I'm trying to remember what I did. Let's try it this way again. Holding down shift with a smaller, oops. Make sure you have a mask selected, and here we go. So black is on top. Holding down the shift button. Okay, and over here. Anyway, you can play around with that to try to do what you can. For some reason I'm not doing as good of a job this time. Maybe I had even a larger brush. Let's try that. And I could have had the opacity turned down perhaps. So maybe 50%. Larger brush. Let's try 30%. And then I'll put it there. No, that's too subtle. Anyway, you can kind of see what I'm trying to do. Yeah, I think that's working better. Larger brush, opacity is turned down more. Okay, well, there we go. Anyway, I might spend more time in trying to fix that, but that seems to be working pretty well. 50% larger brush. So there you can kind of see what I'm trying to achieve. So we covered just now taking a image which was HDR'd, this one right here, combining it in one layer. I guess I could show how to import it into Photoshop, the image. You know, you just go over here to File, Open, look for your image. Let's just say this is an HDR image right here that I HDR, which I haven't, but anyway, that's what you would do. You would just find the image, click Open, and then it pops up in a layer. In fact, no, it doesn't pop up in a layer. You have to paste it. So I'll show that. So this will open up in its own file. If you remember this from yesterday, I'll hit Apple A, press that, or Control A for selecting everything, and Control C for copy, or Apple C. Then I'll bring it over here, and then Control V, or Apple V, paste. And so now it's in its own layer. Obviously it's not the same image, so this won't really work. But you know, then you would bring down the opacity and mix it in if it were the same image. So I'm just going to drop that in the garbage. So that's how you do that. I'm sorry I forgot. I kind of took for granted that that might be known how to bring or import in the image. You could have also, I guess I could have also imported, well, no, maybe not. Anyway, that's the way I always do it. I'm curious on this image. Let's see if I bring it up to 100%. No, okay. I was wondering if I Photoshop this. One thing I could do if I, thought it still looked messed up in 40% opacity, I could do what's called droppering this color right here. You notice I just selected the dropper right there. Again, if you click the very lower right hand corner of that, you have other tools appear. Ruler, note tool, color sample tool. Well, I'm just using the eyedropper. And I'll drop her, let's say, a color very close by to here, maybe something like the lighter gray would work well there. Then I can just paint that in. I've selected the brush over here. Well, let's see, maybe something a little darker right at this edge here. And my opacity is at 53%. I'll make this brush a little smaller. The hardness is down to 0. That seems to work best for blending. Okay, so I've kind of done some blending or tweaking there. Maybe I want to make something that's even lighter. I can select the color over there. Bring this back in. And reduce the opacity to 30. 30 seems to be a good opacity for a lot of blending. Make it smaller, and so it doesn't have to be exact, I guess, in this case, because I'm just going to turn on the opacity again. I didn't even see fit to do anything to it last time because the opacity at 40, I couldn't really tell much of a difference. So anyway, there we are, the merging of both those images, and then I would finally flatten it. If I wanted to turn it to a TIFF file or a JPEG, you just go to the upper right area right here and go down to flatten image, because if you try to save it with the layers, it will be a larger file, and it will tell you that it's going to be a larger file. So it's flattening it, and I'll just hit cancel it. These are both very large files, and this PSD file is rather large with the different layers. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything on HDR photography. I'm sorry I don't have FX Pro, but it would be a similar process as far as your settings overall, what you're trying to achieve in comparison to Photomatix. Alright, so let's go on to nighttime photography. And let's see, right here. And then after that we'll talk about restoring a damaged photo and fun things you can do with a person to make them less fat, more fat, age them, or make them younger. Let's see, where did I put that? Maybe that's in, oh. Okay, well I guess I won't do much of a demo as far as that. I showed you yesterday, if you remember, this image. Well, it wasn't this image actually, it was one that was similar, a set of images that I had pieced together in Photoshop. I won't open that tonight, I don't think, but I wanted to show you the settings that I used for that type of photography. The settings are the main, the most important item that makes it possible to take a nighttime image of something like the Milky Way and have it show up. So I pulled the EXIF data. It's in Flickr. You can click on like right up here. Well, let's see, it doesn't have it on that one. And anyway, you can pull it up in Flickr. You don't have to know how, I guess so. Well, let's go ahead and show that anyway. I'll show how to pull up the EXIF data in Photoshop as well in just a minute. And again, it's just the settings you used to create your photo. And let's just try a random image right there. Okay, so if you click right on the type of camera that was used, right there, and then you'll see all your EXIF data. So that's what I wanted to show. Okay, so back to this image. The exposure was set at 30 seconds. That's about as high as you can go before you have too much smearing or smudging or movement of the stars in the nighttime sky. unless you have one of those timer type things that will allow your on a tripod, or kind of like they have mounted to telescopes, that will trail along with the stars. I didn't have one of those set up, don't have one of those, so 30 seconds is about my maximum possible exposure for a static or a non-moving tripod. Even with 30 seconds, if I were to look at the full resolution image, there is some movement of the stars, but it's still acceptable when you see the smaller version. 20 seconds is probably better as far as not having a lot of star movement. However, 30 allows you to take in more light and make it more visible what you're looking at. Actually, I think I will open this image because I wanted to show you, I remember now, some of the overlaying the layers to create this image, because when it came right out of the camera, obviously it wasn't quite this visible. The trick is to make it more visible as far as this type of photography, and you have to do a lot of that for anything in the nighttime sky. If you see images people have taken of, say, nebulas or anything like that, different galaxies, Andromeda Galaxy, they've had to tweak it so it's more visible, because in the nighttime sky it kind of looks like a grayish glow to your natural eye, and even with a 30-second exposure, it's still not quite, it doesn't look like that. Okay, aperture is wide open, and f4 is the camera I have is wide open. And aperture means if you've maybe seen the shutters and kind of the how it closes up and opens up wide in the camera. Sorry, I can't explain it very well, but this is wide open. If it were set at f16, f32, that is just a narrow pinhole, not bringing in much light. So you want it wide open so it can take in the maximum amount of the little light that is available in this type of situation. And the long exposure also helps more light be exposed, or get on the film, even though there's not film in the internals of the computer and the camera. One second, I'm going to pause. We've almost gone at 30 seconds, 30 minutes again, but I'll continue on for just a little longer. Okay. ISO speed, also note that it was 3200, 3200, and if you get much higher than that, then you start to have the imagery degradation of it, where you're getting the hot spots because your camera, I think it runs hotter or something like that when you have your ISO higher, and so then you start getting the noise, and it can be colored spots, or they can be just spots, and especially in the dark areas, which are a lot of in the nighttime sky. Even with 3200, I did some of the filtering to reduce the noise in the background of the nighttime sky. Then you have all the other settings: exposure, manual, focal length 31 millimeters. Well, up here actually is the lens focal length. The lens is a zoom lens, and it was set at 21.2 millimeters apparently. The maximum of it is 18 millimeters, and I wanted to go just short of that, because it probably won't be quite as sharp. I was thinking at 18, even though that would be more real estate I could take in the nighttime sky. But anyway, that is the setting I used. And we won't go through the rest of those settings right now, or at all. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause, and the next section will be on another recording.